Hawkeye, Maestro, and a futuristic wasteland. Today we're discussing the new patch from Marvel's Avengers. Let's get to it. So yes, Future Imperfect dropped Thursday just gone, and with it we got a lot of new features in Marvel's Avengers, the main one being Hawkeye. Hawkeye is actually really fun. I really enjoyed him. You guys are seeing some gameplay of him now, and it was really fun to kind of have the original ball user. You know, Kate is fun in her own way, but to have Hawkeye and to see what he's able to do, that was really enjoyable. There are some distinct differences, but there's a lot of similarities as well. You know, Hawkeye doesn't have the same teleportation devices that Kate does, or the decoy. He has more of a kind of self-seeking arrow and kind of these bombardments. They're not as distinct as I would have liked them to be, but I mean, when you're dealing with a bow user who also uses a sword, and another bow user who also uses a sword, there isn't too much you can do with that. And I understand that, and I appreciate that from a design standpoint. But Hawkeye's skins all look brilliant. His voice actor is really good, really sells the role. And, you know, all of his other cosmetic stuff is brilliant as well. Whilst we're on this bit of footage as well, I just want to talk about the Wasteland. The Wasteland was absolutely brilliant in this update. It's perhaps one of the most I think it's the best, the most impressive set piece that we have in the game. And that's saying a lot because I usually don't like wastelands or kind of desert-like zones in games. They usually look very boring, very dull. And, you know, spoilers, but, you know, we're dealing with the future here. We're dealing with Kree remains. We're dealing with the ruins of all these buildings. It's almost Fallout-esque. I got a little bit of Nier Automata with this as well. You have that kind of feeling when you're playing through it. I very much enjoyed going through this zone. I also think the gameplay was varied enough to where it was fun again. You know, it wasn't always the same. They didn't just carbon copy buildings from what they've done before. They kind of rejigged them, and that was nice to see. But yeah, so that was really fun, and I really enjoyed this location. I really enjoyed playing through these missions. In regards to the story though, I have a few different things that I want to discuss in that regard. Firstly, Hawkeye and Kate, who are the kind of main stars of this update, were really fun. Done really well in terms of characterization. It was really enjoyable to see them back and forth. We got a little bit of a understanding of the kind of relationship between them, because, you know, so far we've been told about it, but we haven't necessarily been able to experience it ourselves. So that was really fun. The only issue in terms of interactions that came in this patch was the fact that aside from Hawkeye and Kate, we really didn't get much else in terms of contributions from other characters. Tony has one line, Thor has one line, Kamala has one line, Widow has maybe 3 lines, Bruce and Cap don't feature, unless you take them with you, which even then they're not saying anything. So sadly, we kind of don't get as much of an Avengers feel, quote unquote, as I'd like personally. I feel like if you're going to the future to stop a, you know, big threat like the Kree, you kind of want to have that Avengers feel. You don't want to just have Hawkeye. And again, that linked into a later issue in the story, and that being Maestro. Now, Maestro, obviously, if you guys don't know Maestro, he's a big villain in the comics. He's meant to be like the epitome of Hulk. He's like Hulk if he mastered his gamma abilities. I mean, Maestro is not his name for no reason. And so the fact that he was beaten, especially in the cutscenes, by simply Hawkeye, was kind of a letdown. I'm not saying Hawkeye isn't a strong character. He is very strong in gameplay, for example, and very interesting character. But Maestro is a gamma-enhanced Hulk. Like, you know, he's huge. He's intelligent. He is meant to be really practiced in terms of fighting, and he's meant to be like an ultimate foe on the levels of Thanos or, you know, someone like that. We kind of didn't get that because he was defeated rather promptly by Hawkeye and old Hawkeye. And then that was it. He was kind of done. That isn't the only issue with the story either. The story seemed very much to just end abruptly. It was almost as if you'd watched 20 minutes of a show and then the last 30 minutes weren't there. Like, it felt very much like this should have been either, if there was meant to be more of this coming with this update, or if there was more to be coming with another update, it should have been compressed together in terms of story-wise, because the story just felt entirely incomplete. Again, spoilers, but at the end of the story, we've come to the future. We're trying to find some kind of information to help us stop the Kree, and what we find is Nick Fury and Monica frozen in time, and then that's it. That's like we don't get an insight as to how that might help us defeat the Kree. It's just Nick Fury's frozen in time, and I guess the point is that Nick Fury is going to help us, and we need to find a way to get Nick Fury out. But it's not even, that isn't even like explained or kind of suggested at. It's just like there's an intimate moment between young Hawkeye and old Hawkeye, and then it fades to a photograph of Kate Bishop, Lucky the dog, and Clint, and it's like that's it. That's the DLC. It's done. It felt very abrupt. It felt very unfinished, in my opinion, and it's really a shame because there was a lot of good ideas going in here. There was a lot of great atmospheric like set pieces, like loads of big Kree heads and big ships that had fallen, and you know there was a lot of interesting stuff that was happening, and then nothing. You know, like it just ended, and I can't stress enough how disappointing that is, especially when you're waiting so long for a patch like this. I mean, gameplay wise, enjoyability wise, in terms of playing through the story, I loved it. I loved playing as Hawkeye. His skins looked great. He felt really cool to play as. There's no issue there. But there's kind of no point in that if the story, which is something that's big for Avengers and big for Marvel in general, story and interconnectedness and big kind of spectacle, if that's not there, then what's kind of even the point of having good gameplay? You need to have a good story to back that up, in my opinion. Some people might disagree, but I'm very much a story person by nature. So really, I think the story was kind of underwhelming, but the gameplay spot on. And then discussing kind of other features that were added, the harm room, the customizable harm room, very good. I've already used it to kind of I was trying to teach someone a little bit about the game, and that was like a perfect way to do that. Like outside of the usual typical harm room training, you could kind of show and kind of have those moments of like, hey, you need to do this, do that, do this, and you can show them other villains and other enemies that you might face and kind of be able to give them a little bit of insight as how they work, because you know sometimes a descriptor on the bottom of the screen isn't enough. The customizable harm room really works, and really is a good addition to the game. It allows people to have those extra challenges if they want to as well, if they're feeling like, hey, I want to do something really silly and stupid and fun. So that's great. But on another point, the addition of missions in this patch is kind of short, in that we only really get, I believe, 3 missions from what I've heard. There is intended to be a Maestro villain sector. There's intended to be another villain sector, I believe. But I've never seen those because they only appear at certain times. And then there's a one standard mission that will always be there. And that's kind of disappointing. The zone that we were given is so big and so rich. And I feel like even just a few drop zone missions would have helped a lot in terms of playability and continued gameplay. It was kind of disappointing to see, honestly. I know they're working on other updates for the game, which we will be discussing in another video, but it felt really kind of half-baked. It felt really half-baked, this patch. But again, this was a really fun patch. I'm always happy for Marvel Avengers getting an update. I just wish the story would be slightly more on caliber of that of Taking Aim, because Taking Aim was really fun and really enjoyable. And I just feel like this was kind of a step down from that. Otherwise, it is looking good for Marvel's Avengers going forward. I think this is a blip rather than anything to worry too much about. Though I am somewhat concerned that if the future of characters being released is only for them to have kind of interaction with 1 or 2 characters rather than the Avengers roster, then are we playing an Avengers game, or are we just playing isolated stories of characters who happen to be Avengers, if that makes sense? Oh, and I did forget to talk about the replayability of the campaign. I think this is a great addition to the game. I'm really happy that they added it. From my point of view, I'm never really too interested in replaying a story. After I've played it once, I'm kind of done with it. But I know for a lot of other people, this is something that's really important. And so I want those guys to be able to go experience the story again. So I'm really happy that this is added. It should have been something that really was added day one, but we've got it now, and I'm really glad for those people who can enjoy that. So if you are one of those people, you should go and check that out right now, because it is live. Otherwise, guys, let me know how you enjoyed the patch. I'd really like to know your opinion and how you feel about Hawkeye, how you feel about Maestro and the story, where you think it's going next. And keep an eye out for another video soon. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.